first of all, she's so incredibly courageous. It's very humbling to think of the risk that she took, and the courage with which she faced every stage of what happened to her. It's a hard question to answer, partly because I almost feel like it's people like her who give us hope. It's people like her who show us our collective responsibilities, but also the courage it takes to confront those collective responsibilities. And it shouldn't be the burden of one person or two people or three people who become symbols. It really is up to all of us. And I think part of the honor in taking part in that Day for the Imprisoned Writers was to try to express some of that gratitude and to express some of that deep respect and admiration and the hope that it could elicit that same courage in each of us. Why there was so little coverage, that's a very, very difficult question to answer. I suspect it's because there are a number of these, what they call black sites, black jails inside China, that get very little coverage overall, and these ones in particular. It's so difficult to know how to approach human rights in China because of the importance of consistently not letting these things fade into silence or absence, but also finding a language in which there can be some sort of change in these deeper structures. It's hard to find the language that the current Chinese government will hear and feel is something that they are ready to take a step on. I don't think we've found that language yet. I have hope that there is one. And I think, as with Meinam, it's the courage of these individuals that just stops you in your tracks in the face of a government that has that level of power into such every aspect of a person's life. Yeah. Oh, probably entirely. I do wonder if I have some very open-ended idea of home in a sense, but also a very appreciative one. I mean, I think both my parents have passed away now, and I think the homes they were able to make and the homes they tried to make and the homes that only existed in their imagination and the homes that they really could not return to, I think it's a combination of all those things, which really made them who they are too, or who they were, and me. I think what I really love about what I learned from them was that the physical place, the city or the place in which they make that home, it is always altered by them. You know, I think there's something quite beautiful about that the place itself is this organic thing that has to hold all these other kinds of dreams, or all these other things that are being forgotten, or all these other things that don't quite fit into that place. And I think that sense of the layering of the new home is there's lots of ways for a person to be in that place. Yeah. It's so complex because, in a sense, to be a refugee is a political political condition that requires political answers. But it's only one part of this person's identity and of their life. And I think that's the complication of it. We need political answers to these questions, and we need to live up to our responsibilities. And then on the other side, there's just the full human scale, like the complexity of each individual who's arriving, the complexity of their particular situation, of what they're going to need economically, and there's so many other kinds of needs, though, too. And I think that term of the refugee helps maybe when we're talking about certain political questions, and in other times it obscures a great deal about these individuals. So I wonder if there's just some way for us to have these conversations, knowing that when we use the term, we're applying a very specific parameter to what we're talking about, and not lose sight of everything else that needs to be part of this conversation. Wow, I can't even quite imagine. And you know, there's such different ways that could happen, I guess, that being silenced in one's own country, and then of being in another place that's operating in a different language and not having anyone to speak to, you know, that where that literature to go, it can't find its way back into the home country or the language necessarily that it's trying to speak towards. I think partly what's been always remarkable is how so many writers who have been displaced, or so many people who have been displaced, have found the ability to exist in yet one more language. And I think that new language, new for them, is always going to house the conceptual ideas of the other languages. And so I'd say in the English language we've been very fortunate that it allows many more conceptual worlds in our language. That's fortunate for us who speak English, that we've been the recipients of this. Double-edged swords sometimes. Yeah, you give up one thing and gain another, and then maybe at some point they can coexist again. I think we have duties as citizens. I think we have duties as a collective. I think we have responsibilities. As writers, partly what we hope is to have that freedom for each and every one. So not to say you must write this or you must write that or you have a duty to write this, but to say that we're trying to understand what this freedom is and what it consists of. And probably in my own case, to speak personally, I think something I think about a lot is the freedoms that I don't make use of. A new novel, yeah. Going very slowly, as always, maybe more slowly than usual. But it's great being here in The Hague, and great having the opportunity even just to walk these streets, because part of what I'm writing is very much about Benedict de Spinoza. And not that it's a historical novel, and not that he's going to appear, or not that I'm going to the 1600s, but his thoughts are playing a big role in this new novel. It's such a personal one. I think the book I would take is Seis Noodboons All Souls Day. I read it at a very particular time in my life, and it was this book that I happened to be reading this book in 2002, and I was maybe 6 pages from the end, and I received this phone call that was basically told me my mother had passed away, died suddenly, and I never finished reading the last 6 pages, and in a funny way I can't bring myself to finish it. I almost always want this book to be never ending. So that's probably the book I would take. And also it's a book that I love very much, and he's walking through Berlin, and it's a man actually who's lost his family 10 years ago, and he's just gathering these memories and scraps of present-day Berlin, and it steeped in Berlin's history. It's a book that really spoke to me, and probably will be the book I will never finish.